In this video, I'm going back in time to look at Windows Vista, and was it really as bad as the press made out at the time? I remember the announcements back at CES in 2007. I was there, and Microsoft made a big launch of Windows Vista, but it had some troubled development in replacing XP, and really it never did replace XP. Microsoft didn't really get its mojo back until perhaps Windows 7. But anyway, in this video I'm going to look at Windows Vista and see if it really is as bad as we thought it was at the time. So I'm using Hyper-V to test this, running on a Surface laptop. And if you're interested in running old operating systems on Hyper-V, I've got an article on thedigitalifestyle.com on how to do that. So my first step will be to get it installed, which I'll do now. And once I've got it installed, we'll take a look at how it was. Okay, so I'm on the initial setup experience, and as common Windows, you always create a user. So let me create a user. Let me create a user, and we'll give a meaningful password, and we can give it a hint. Your password. I can choose a picture, and let's have the robot, and there we go. So that's the initial user setup, and we get to name the PC. I actually prefer this because I find it a real pain when they have all the automated naming, and it's better to have a good name. I'm going to call it My Vista PC. There we go, and we can choose a backdrop, and we'll keep that one. There we go. And we'll have Windows Update. Remember, Windows XP had the browser-based update that was introduced into it. So this is the first operating system effectively had this sort of built-in Windows updates like this. And then we get to choose our location, home, work, or public. That's the firewall settings. I think the Service Pack 2 for XP introduced that. So I'll put that in. So let's go with Windows Vista. So now it's doing the ratings check. Now, if you don't remember that Windows Vista rated your PC for its hardware performance, and then you could get a game or application, look at that rating and see whether your machine would be able to cope with it. So it's going to be interesting to see what this virtual machine gets in terms of ratings. So this is the welcome screen now. Let's have a look at the more details and see if we've got our rating. There's our Windows Experience Index. That's what the correct term I was looking for. 1. So not very advanced on here, and that's because it's based on your lowest score, and the lowest score in this case is the graphics, because I'm using the basic VGA driver with Hyper-V and not the advanced driver. So it thinks it's got a very basic graphics card in there, which is why we've not got the aero effect, the translucent or transparent effect. We've got the Windows Vista basic theme running on here. I have tried in the past to get the VGA drivers installed, or the advanced drivers, the graphics drivers installed with Vista on Hyper-V, and I haven't managed to do it. So maybe I'll try, but I seem to remember last time I couldn't get this working. So there you go. So if I was to buy a game, I will make sure that it runs on a machine with 1. Well, let's see what software is available for my basic score. So here you see we're using Internet Explorer 7 that came with Vista, and not surprisingly the page that we're looking at for our software that would be available for us with our score is not available. That returned a long time ago, but that was what the indexing the score was talking about. Okay, so here we are at the desktop, and first of all you can see the sidebar. Do you remember the sidebar? So this was an area where you could attach widgets, and they would stay there, and like you've got a clock and your slideshow view and news headlines. It's funny how these things, it looked a good idea at the time, but of course it takes up quite a bit of screen real estate. But I think if you've got a big wide monitor like people have now, it won't be much of an issue. It was I found it quite useful, but it was a bit of a novelty in the end, and developers really didn't pile in to make lots of these widgets, so it kind of died off when Windows 7 came out. But you see, I can have a CPU meter, which was all the rage back in 2007, and what else could I have on there? We could have the weather on there as well. Oh no, it doesn't work. But there you can see. So I've got my CPU monitor, and I can get some news headlines via RSS feed. Let's give that a try. So let's have a look at the start menu, how it looked. So not hugely dissimilar from XP. Remember, people come from XP to this. There is a new sort of look to it, and Windows 7 kind of carried on with that. Some of the things that disappeared though was no longer My Documents and My Pictures. It's just got Documents and Pictures, which makes more sense. And obviously built into it was email, Microsoft's email and Internet Explorer clients. There was some other interesting software, and I could do a whole video itself, and one of them being Windows Media Center. And Windows Media Center is how I actually started getting into all this. The idea behind Windows Media Center, it was a 10-foot user interface. You would connect it up to your PC up to a TV, and you could watch TV through it. You could look at your pictures. You could have online media, music, all in one place. So rather than being, an app for music, an app for pictures, and an app for something this, and an app for that, all your media would be in one place. It actually started with Windows XP Media Center Edition, but with Vista, it was Vista Home Premium, which is the edition that I'm looking at here. It was built in. So in XP, it was a separate SKU that you had to buy with hardware. With Vista, it was on all machines. So it was kind of the biggest rollout of Windows Media Center, and it was really impressive. And it was a great way of having everything in one place. So I had my PC under the TV, connected up to the TV, and you had a Windows Media Center remote. So it never really took off, and people didn't want the complexity of a PC underneath their TV. I did, and I had everything. I had all my pictures and all my movies and everything in one place. And still fondly remembered Windows Media Center. So that was Windows Media Center. We're talking about editions, different versions of Vista had different editions, just as a bit like how you get now with Windows 10 Professional, Windows 10 the Professional with S or whatever, the different versions. So there was Starter, Home Basic, Home Premium, Business, Enterprise, and Ultimate. The ones I'm looking at here is Home Premium. That was the most sold consumer version, and the Business was obviously the one that Enterprise and Business is installed. Ultimate had all the features in, so there were some things that weren't very. With Starter, you didn't have the glass effects, and you didn't have Media Center and some of the other applications. Basic didn't have Media Center and things like that in there. In the Home Premium, didn't have domain join, so you couldn't use it on a network, enterprise network. Business did, but didn't have Media Center. Ultimate had everything in there, so Microsoft tried to sell it as Ultimate one was, you would want, if you wanted everything there, you could upgrade it as well. One of the things that Vista introduced, and was a lot of criticism at the time, we've kind of got used to it now, is a user account control. So by default, a user can't do admin changes or major system change without some prompt, and this caused a lot of issues at the time. So, for example, you can see these here with the little shield on there. We've kind of got used to that now, I think, Windows 10. But if I wanted to add user accounts on there, you have to do this permissions to continue. Just as we see in Windows 10 now, this is designed so that a rogue application can't have admin rights and just decimate your system, viruses or spyware, that kind of thing. But through here, at the time, this was new, and it really did get on people's nerves, and it was one of the main complaints of Vista. What Microsoft did over time was kind of tone down the amount of change, the amount of time you had to do this. So it's still necessary if you want to install some in Windows 10. You still see it pop up every now and again, especially if you're on an enterprise network where you've got admin rights. But they've reduced the amount of times you see this dialog box. So you get to see that quite a lot when you're doing any of the admin type stuff. But it makes sense, you want to protect your machine. So I think, again, probably bad press. At the time, XP didn't get any of this, but it wasn't as secure. So, and we kind of got used to these not being able to have admin rights for general users now. Probably the main issue that it that caused many users problems was the additional resources that Vista needed compared to XP. And I think that was partly because they were selling, I remember PCs being sold as Vista Ready. They had a sticker program. I think there was Vista Compatible and Vista Ready, and one had lower spec than the others. And I think that was a mistake that Microsoft made, allowing that. I remember seeing PCs with half of a gig of RAM being on sale with the Vista Ready sticker on there, or Vista Compatible. And really, it's not up to the job. You need at least a gig. Let's have a see how much this is using now, because you can see out the box there it's using 600. I've not installed any applications, and just like Windows 7 requirements, it's very similar. Really, it's just a bit more than XP, but I think people upgrading older XP hardware noticed that this was a bit more resource requirements, and it did take a bit more memory. And then if you've got an old PC with a slow hard drive with not much memory, then it's going to be swapping out the memory to the page file, which runs on the old spinning hard disk, which is slow, and that's when you got that slow. And I did experience that with some of my machines as well. I ran it on various machines, including on netbooks. Remember the netbooks? And netbooks were being sold with half a gig of RAM, and people trying to upgrade Vista. It's just a very bad experience. And I think if you had a nice, fast, premium machine when the Vista launched, you had a good experience. But if you upgraded an older XP machine, or I bought one of the machines with limited amount of resources in, then you would have that problem as well. One of the other issues, of course, was with drivers, and they switched to a new driver model with Windows Vista, and a lot of the manufacturers, especially printer manufacturers, didn't have drivers available. So you came to use your printer and it didn't work. You could say it's Microsoft's fault for not working better with the OEMs, the HPs and so on. But I remember at the time a lot of problems with drivers, and of course not something we really need to worry about now. Drivers, you plug something in, it turns to download the driver through the Windows update, and away you go. But at the time it was CDs. Getting CDs or going online to get drivers was not as simple, and if the driver wasn't compatible with Vista's driver model, then it wouldn't work. So there was a lot of hardware that didn't work at the time, and I think that was one of the issues that really put people off Windows Vista. In general, this is a 64-bit version of Vista I'm running as well. There was a 64-bit version of Windows 7 available, but it was a special install, DVD or install that you need of it. But with Vista, it came in 32-bit and 64 bits, and depending on your hardware. So this is a 64-bit version I've got on, which is including the 64-bit of Internet Explorer, which didn't do very much, I seem to remember at the time. Everything was still needing 32-bit. And of course, I mentioned at the beginning the Windows update built into the operating system. And I think I need to set my date and time correctly for this to work. I'm not going to actually do check for updates now, because there's probably a lot to a basic Windows Vista system from 2007. I'd removed programs, got this new look as well, which included you could view the updates in here as well. Obviously it's not going to find any because I haven't done any updates. Here's something that was big at the time but never really took off. It was Windows Sideshow. So this was enabling you to set up a second display with Windows that would have information like maybe the time, unread emails, media player, that kind of thing. And it was using gadgets, and we've no devices to test this with. And I don't think I ever saw anything in maybe a laptop with it on one. So the idea was you had a laptop which had a second display, like a little LCD display on the lid, so you could see how many emails you had without opening up the laptop. You could check for calendar and news stories and that thing. You could have a little hardware display. I don't remember ever seeing any of these actually go on sale. They were supposed to look like this, where you had this little control panel on your laptop lid, kind of like a mini operating system, where you could get your email and control your media playback. But it was a great idea. A technology that it was a good idea, but I never actually saw one in the wild. So there you go. It was a nice idea. There's something else you could do as well. You could manage and buy applications through your digital locker, which by them you could store your keys through here. Another page that's no longer available. But that seemed a good idea. Again, not many people seem to use that. And it was a few years before we got sort of into the App Store kind of model. I'm pretty sure this was also where we first saw this turn Windows features on and off screen, where you could enable and disable features, which is still in Windows 10. There are some new ways of doing it, but essentially it's still there. I've seen it on server boxes, so where you could install FTP clients, and you could add and remove your games on there, so you could get rid of them through this way. So that was a new feature that was based that came into Vista. Because another thing that was built into Vista into certain editions, the Business and the Home Premium and the Ultimate, was the tablet PC tools on there. For Windows XP, they were a separate installation, separate SKU, but they came with this, and so we had all the tablet PC controls actually built into Windows. Some nice relics from the past in here as well. Windows Live Messenger, you could download and install. So like a chat function, predates all the chat services we've got now and Teams and everything else, but it was there. DVD maker, so you can make DVDs with your images, or you can make slideshows with DVDs or videos with DVDs with DVD maker. You could put a blank DVD in and create your own slideshows, things like that. We had the photo gallery, which was a way of viewing all your pictures in a nice formatted way with ratings and tags and everything else like that, to make a movie out of them. I don't have accelerated video, but Windows Movie Maker is built into this, and you can make a movie out of the video clips and pictures. And you even have some basic photo editing functions in there, along with Media Player as well. Of course, for media, as I mentioned, Media Center 4, but it also has Windows Media Player built in there as well. Media Player 11, which was actually a good media player. And you can do things like rip DVDs. You can make a nice DVD rip of it, and you could sync it to a portable media player as well, which is something that I used to do. You could sync your podcasts with it and everything else. So you could configure sharing with folders, and you could do media sharing. So I'm going to share my media over the network. This is exciting. So the idea, and there's that user dialog box again. So you could share your media with other devices on the network. So I can say other users of PC, and I don't think it'll find anything that I can share on here. But the idea was, with Media Player, you could have all your media in one place. It would index everything. You could do all your managing of ratings and your album art, your cover art, all that kind of stuff. You could do all that, and I spent a lot of time in Media Player. Making sure my all my MP3 files were got the correct data on them. So having used it, you can see it's not crashed once. Okay, we're not doing a huge amount with it, but it didn't used to crash for me. I think Vista got a bad reputation, partly for Microsoft's fault of putting the PC requirements too low. It did require additional resources over XP, and I think they should have been clear on that, and then it wouldn't have got as bad initial impression. Some things like the user dialogue, like the security dialogue boxes, we kind of got used to, and they did manage to tone them down. So I think that was criticism at the time, but over time we've got used to that. Many of the things that we see in future versions of Windows, like Windows 7 and right into Windows 10, are based on the changes that they made with Windows Vista and the security model. So I think Windows 10 and Windows 7 wouldn't have been what they are without Vista. In many respects, Windows 7 is just a cleaned up version of Vista, and the hardware moved on at that time when 7 was released, and there wasn't the same problems with devices having low specs and everything else. Also, the drivers have been improved by the manufacturers, and there weren't as many old devices, so that got rid of the hardware compatibility issues. So I think Vista did get a bad press at the time. I was glad to see Windows 7 and move on to Windows 7, and a lot of people skipped Vista completely and just went from XP to Windows 7. But looking back on it, I don't think it was as bad as the press got it at the time. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, ian@thislife.com, or at iSticks on Twitter, and maybe we'll look at some other operating systems soon. Thanks for watching.